Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Facebook Live event with the Innovative Dad. I'm Dr. Ari Yaris, a psychologist, former principal, and parent coach. And if you're just joining us for the first time, this is a weekly series of chats about topics related to parenting and how we can improve our parenting with a strong connection to innovation and the things that we can learn from not getting stuck in the mud with our parenting and being very rigid and wanting to learn from the mistakes that we're making and to try different things and to really make parenting an iterative process as we're engaging with our children and building that relationship and working to shape them over time. So today's topic is mindfulness. This is something that has been a lot in the news. It's a buzzword both in the parenting circles and adult circles and in education as well. Definitely something that I've been hearing a lot about lately, and I thought it might be good just to sort of touch on it. What is it? What kind of impact does it have? And how could we incorporate it into our parenting? So we'll talk a little bit at the end about some exercises to try involving engaging in mindfulness. But let's start first, of course, with the definition. Mindfulness is a practice of bringing a gentle, accepting attitude to the present moment. If you've ever thought about your own presence and coaching in terms of how to appear at a public speaking event, much of that is pulling from mindfulness. It's a technique that emphasizes this paying attention to the present moment, putting you in that accepting, non-judgmental manner. And we can use mindfulness to help kids focus on what's happening now and keep their thoughts from drifting. It is something that kids can learn, and it can build a wide variety of skills. So let's take a look at what kind of impact mindfulness could have on us and on our children, because it's not just something that we can practice on our children, but something that we can practice and model for them. And one of the best instructional methods for mindfulness is to actually model it for a child, as opposed to just saying, hey, you do this. You got to walk the talk as well when it comes from mindfulness. The research on mindfulness is something that is still emerging and developing over time, as we look at what refining the definition for research purposes, which is a little bit more complicated when it comes to practice purposes, because we do want the research to have the ability to be replicated. What we're seeing is that it can help children improve their abilities to pay attention, to calm down when they're upset, and to make better decisions. Essentially helping with emotional regulation and with cognitive focus. So we've seen it help mitigate the effects of bullying, enhance focus in kids with ADHD, reduce attention problems, generally improve mental health and well-being, and have the potential to improve social skills when taught and practiced in both children and adolescents. And it is something that, we've talked about this. It can help with focus. It can help a child essentially catch their thoughts before they react, and that idea of building self-control, and overall helping them be more self-aware, which I think is something that we all sort of struggle with helping our children figure out. How many times have you said to your child, do you know what's going on in this room? And then the other element of it is helping to build some self-esteem. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to incorporate mindfulness into your parenting. So the first thing is to start thinking about, how do you incorporate mindfulness into your own daily life? And because you can't outsource it, folks. You're going to need to show them that you're doing this, and then it'll be something that they'll be easier to pick up on. Overall, like any skill, one of the big things that's really important is that mindfulness comes with practice. Some mindfulness routines are going to seem a lot like meditation. There's definitely connections there. And meditation is another one of those skills that you get better at over time. Practice is really key. And if you think about it, any of the strategies that you may have used with your children to get them to calm down, they don't work as well when you introduce them in that moment of stress. So if you make a mindfulness exercise part of your regular routine, whether it's in the morning, in the evening, what have you, um, it's going to make it easier for that to become uh, a tool that can be applied in a stressful situation because it's now part of your child's toolbox, as opposed to trying to hand them an unfamiliar tool in a time of stress. Now, look, let's take that analogy a little bit further. Think about how you react when you're asked to do something new in a moment of stress, even with, an actual toolbox. If I hand you while you're trying to keep something glued together, a tool that you've never used and you don't know how to use, uh, it's going to add to your stress, and you're going to be worried about breaking it, hurting yourself with the tool. Your kid is really no different. So practice really, really is the key. There are apps out there that you can put on your phone. There's a bevy of websites available that have different routines. I'm going to put some links in the comments to this about some of the sites that I've used and some of the mindfulness exercises that I have found to be really helpful in working with my own children and with the children of clients, as well as some links to some apps that you can put on your phone to help you put these together. So one of my favorites is the idea of a breathing buddy. And this is something that I saw on a podcast that Dan Goleman had put together, and I'll put a link to a video with him describing it on it. But it's essentially a really simple technique. It's something that you can incorporate into bedtime. You can have your child lie down, and they can place a stuffed animal, that's their breathing buddy, onto their bed, onto their belly, and a lovey or something that they're connected to. And as you count to 3, have them breathe in through their nose, filling their belly with air, and they're going to watch that stuffed animal rise as they're breathing in, and then count to 3 while they breathe out and watch their stuffed animal gently lower itself down as they exhale, and as their belly sort of collapses in with that. And it's the kind of thing, you don't want to do that just once. You're going to want to do 5 to 10 rounds of it, but it's a great way to really center and calm a child. And you as an adult can do it. You don't have to put a stuffed animal on your belly, but you can do that lying in bed, or you could even do that while you're waiting in line at the grocery store as a way of sort of practicing that centering approach that gives. So there's a couple of other techniques that are relatively simple and straightforward that you can sort of build into your mindfulness repertoire. Again, both for your child and for yourself. So body poses is a great way. And you can tell your kids, look, we're going to do some fun poses that are going to help you feel strong, brave, and happy. So you want to go to somewhere quiet and familiar, a place that they feel safe, not necessarily in the middle of the grocery aisle, and tell them to try one of these 2. I like these. One is the Superman pose, and you're going to stand with your feet just wider than your hips, your fists clenched, your arms reached out, and stretching that body as long as possible, almost if you're going to be ready to leap tall buildings in a single bound. And then the other is the Wonder Woman. And you do this by standing tall with your legs wider than your hip again. That gives you a nice solid base for your core. And placing your hands or fists on your hips. And look, again, that's your classic Wonder Woman pose from the comics. But both of those are really great ways just to build some general awareness of the body. Another great activity is a mindful jar, and to take a mason jar and fill it all the way to almost all the way to the top of water, and then add a spoonful of glitter glue or glue and dry glitter in the jar. Put the lid back on the jar solidly, please, and shake it to make the glitter swirl. And you're going to use this as a tool to help kids talk and think about strong emotions. So, here's a script that you could use. Imagine that the glitter is like your thoughts when you're stressed, mad, or upset. see how they whirl around and make it really hard to see clearly, and so you're going to give it a nice shake. And that's why it's easy to make silly decisions when you're upset, because you're not thinking clearly. And explain to your kids, don't worry, this is totally normal, and it happens in all of us, yeah, including us. And something that's really important to think about when you're talking about emotions with kids is to remind them that we experience these emotions as well. And that's a great way to really help validate how an emotion is feeling for a kid, if you let them recognize that these same things happen in you and just as well. Now, next, you're going to put the jar down in front of them, and you're going to watch what happens as you're still for a couple of minutes, because that glitter is going to start to settle and the water is going to start to clear. And your mind works the same way. When you're calm for a little while, your thoughts start to settle and you start to think things much clearer. And this is a great exercise for children to learn about how emotions can cloud their thoughts, but it also facilitates the practice of mindfulness while focusing on the swirling glitter in the jar. And you could try one of those body poses at the same time. Now, one last mindfulness technique. This is something that I use with my own kids at bedtime. It's something that I do with myself at bedtime as well, and it's a body scan. And you're going to want to have your kids lie down on their backs in a comfortable surface and close their eyes. And then you want them to progressively squeeze each muscle in their body as tight as they can. And you can walk them through this. Start all the way down with having them notice their toes and their feet. Are their socks on? Are their socks off? Do they feel the bed underneath of them? And work up to your calves, knees, hips, into your back, to your belly. And have them clench and release the muscles as they move up. And encourage them as you're doing this, talking them through, getting them to think a little bit about how their body is feeling. And with any of these techniques, you want to use a nice, calm, engaging tone. Center yourself before you get started. You want to bring out that inner news anchor announcement voice and keep that sort of nice, calm, even cadence. And let them relax as you're doing this. And that body scan is a great way, again, maybe before or after doing a breathing buddies activity, to embed mindfulness into bedtime, which I happen to think is a great time for you to really be practicing these techniques. There's a little bit of a less rush in the house than there is first thing in the morning. And in doing that, you start to build up tools. You have time to connect with your child as well. You can do this one-on-one. I've done it with 3 of my kids at the same time, standing just outside the doorway so that they could all hear my voice. So if you've got multiple kids, you don't have to do it one-on-one. You can do this as a group. Just make sure that you've got enough focus and that you're not totally disrupting your bedtime routine. So these are just a handful of techniques that you can use to embed mindfulness into your parenting. There is a lot more out there, but I felt that these techniques were a great starting place to bring this technique into the way that you engage as a parent with your child, and another way to really raise that level of innovative parenting that you're doing, and trying out different things that are going to help build up the skills that you want your child to have as they're growing and developing skills. And and I'm a big fan of working on anything that's going to help your child build emotional regulation and self-control. I think those are the really critical skills that you can get as a child and growing up, and they need to be actively taught. And if you're not doing that, these are places where your child is going to struggle a little bit. So I really encourage you to take a look at these techniques, think about things that are going to help your children adjust and engage with their emotions and validate them, and connect them with the way that their body is feeling. So that's mindfulness in a nutshell. Again, really bringing you back to the present moment in an accepting and non-judgmental manner. Okay, so that's our Facebook Live event for this week. Next week, we're going to be taking a look at helping your kids with choices. And again, that's a place where mindfulness, if you can get that emotional regulation in place, is really going to help. But we're going to talk about not just how you can set up choices for your children, but how you can walk them through the process. Because again, in working towards independence for our kids, we really want them to, make healthy and smart choices. So look forward to seeing you again next week, 9:30 Eastern Standard. Hopefully with slightly warmer weather out there than our bomb cyclone that we're about to experience. So look forward to chatting with you. Stay tuned to the Facebook page and follow the blog as well if you're not already. And also, you can sign up on the website. There's a weekly newsletter. So go to rayaris.com and sign up for that newsletter. All right, folks, have a great night and happy parenting.